In a time when the action genre is dominated by superhero movies, reboots, and legacy sequels, it's now easier than ever before to look back on films from decades past that were once ignored or even heavily criticized and view them in a more positive light. Especially grounded, gritty action movies with a simple, original concept. One of the best examples being 1993's Judgment Night. The movie centers around a group of 4 friends who, on their way to a boxing match, take a detour through a dangerous part of Chicago and, after witnessing a murder, find themselves pursued by a ruthless crime lord who wants them dead.
All right, opportunity knocked, and you failed to answer. Come on, let's talk.
Receiving just flat-out bad reviews from critics and a middle-of-the-road reception by viewing audiences, the film was both a critical and financial failure.
Judgment Night, it sucked.
And while this isn't one of the best in its genre or anything, Judgment Night is a solid action thriller with a premise so simple that if it were made today, it would never receive enough of a budget to support a cast this stacked and would probably get turned into a soulless Netflix movie. Or even worse, go straight to DVD and spend the rest of its days at the bottom of a Walmart movie bin. In today's video, we'll be looking back on the making of Judgment Night, the violent real-life event that damaged its theatrical run, and of course, that killer soundtrack, in the very first episode of Films from a Lost Era.
We saw a boy get murdered tonight. If they catch us, they're gonna kill us too.
This fall, there's one movie to see. Judgment Night, rated R. Starts Friday, October 15th.
Although Judgment Night seems like a pretty straightforward action thriller that probably didn't take much time to piece together, when production began in 1992, the film had been in development for nearly 15 years. In 1978, rock and roll photographer turned screenwriter Richard DeLello came up with the basic story idea, and over the next decade or so, several writers took a crack at expanding that idea into a full-fledged screenplay, including but not limited to John Carpenter, and ironically enough, the co-writer of Terminator 2 Judgment Day. But it wasn't until Stephen Hopkins signed on to direct that the movie started to gain some traction.
Spent over a year developing, honing all these different scripts. This project is 15 years old. There was a lot of different scripts.
Stephen decided that after directing an over-the-top horror sequel in A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, and an over-the-top action sequel in Predator 2, he really wanted to give Judgment Night a more realistic, gritty tone. When it came to casting, scheduling conflicts or simply a lack of interest in the project kept Judgment Night from featuring a number of different actors. For the role of lead protagonist Frank Wyatt, Tom Cruise and Christian Slater were offered the part, both turning it down. But Stephen Hopkins really had his heart set on John Travolta. However, Quentin Tarantino had yet to give him a career resurgence with Pulp Fiction. So Largo Entertainment basically said, there's no way in hell we're making the Look Who's Talking guy the star of what we expect to be our studio's tentpole action thriller.
When you want to take a dump?
Poo-poo.
Let me get this straight. You want me to take a dump outside my diaper?
The problem was, Largo purchased the rights to Judgment Night in 1989 with a 5-year window to begin production, and time was running out. They had to find their star. In a stroke of fate, Stephen Hopkins was waiting to use a payphone when all of a sudden the guy on the phone turns around, tips his hat, and you'll never guess who it was. Emilio Estevez, the mighty Duck Man. Stephen looked him in the eyes and yelled, "Emilio!" And he got the part without ever seeing the script. Dude, it was amazing. Alright, so maybe I stole all of that from A Night at the Roxbury, but it was a lot more entertaining than what actually happened, so it's canon now. As Judgment Night begins, Stephen Hopkins did a really good job in contrasting the lives of these characters against the individuals they would come up against later on in the film. There's an aerial shot that establishes Evanston, Illinois as the initial setting, which is just nothing short of idyllic. But there's a bit of movie magic here because Frank's house is actually situated in Pasadena, California. In fact, everything up to the train yard scene was filmed throughout Los Angeles, with the remainder of the movie being shot in Chicago. Well, except for the sewer scene, but we'll get back to that later. For all of my film location nerds out there, this house is a short walking distance away from the home used in Child's Play 2, and like half of the houses from Back to the Future 1 and 2.
He's a peeping Tom.
Frank, a bit stir-crazy after spending a few months at home with his wife and newborn baby, is heading out for a night in Chicago to see a boxing match with the boys, being his buddies Mike and Ray, played by Cuba Gooding Jr. and Jeremy Piven, along with his kid brother John, played by Stephen Dorff. But hold up, why is this dude dressed exactly like John Bender from The Breakfast Club? How many times do you think Emilio accidentally called him Judd in between takes? Ray pulls up in a state-of-the-art RV decked out with multiple TVs, a dope-ass stereo system, a mini bar, and an NES system bundled with a zapper gun.
Hey,
That's not right for you. Don't put your dirty dogs on my clean upholstery either.
Which is strange because the Super Nintendo and Super Scope were already out by the time this was being filmed. Although they probably couldn't fit that stupid thing through the damn door of the RV.
This is balls.
On their way to the match, they get stuck in traffic on the freeway and decide to take a bit of a detour through the city.
Everybody hold on to something. We're getting out of here.
And come on, have none of these idiots seen the movie Vacation? You don't do that.
I wonder if you could tell me how to get back on the expressway.
Hey, your mama.
Thank you very much.
Also, it turns out that no matter where you are in the country, taking a detour like that will somehow send you into a wormhole that leads to Patty's Irish Pub from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
I was watching the movie Judgment Night last night. When the RV breaks down in that movie, they drive right by Patty's.
You know, it's another good classic like downtown movie is Repo Man.
Emilio Estevez only shot nights, right?
Yeah, he's like, is it night? Is it downtown LA? I'm in.
I'm in.
Cruising through a dimly lit area with no idea where to go, Ray gets distracted while looking for a map in the glove compartment and strikes a pedestrian with the RV.
What was that? Maybe a dog or something?
After pulling the victim into the RV to seek out help, the guys realize that this person is in possession of what seems to be a stolen wad of cash, and on top of that, he's been shot. While trying to flag down a cop car, the RV is sideswiped by the main baddie of the film, a man concealed by the shadows simply known as Fallon.
All you gotta do is tell Fallon. That's all I'm asking you to do.
Tell Fallon what?
Having witnessed multiple crimes, Fallon orders his men to quickly take out Frank and the rest of the guys, not expecting that they're going to slip away, kicking off the ultimate cat and mouse chase situation.
Well, boys, rule number 2, no witnesses.
Armed with just one handgun between the 4 of them, no cell phone, and no idea where the hell they are, they simply just want to get home. Seeing as this scenario takes up the remainder of the film's plot, people understandably tend to compare Judgment Night to Walter Hill's 1979 classic, The Warriors. A comparison that makes even more sense when you realize that Lawrence Gordon, the founder and namesake of Largo Entertainment who set Judgment Night into motion, also happened to be a producer on that film. But instead of showcasing the lengths that a bunch of street-smart gang members will go to simply to get back to their own turf, Judgment Night showed you a bunch of suburbanites forced to adapt to a setting and situation that is completely foreign to them, which makes some of their absolutely harebrained decisions a bit easier to swallow. One of the best examples I can give that doesn't spoil anything happens a bit later on in the runtime. The guys finally manage to evade Fallon for a brief moment, at which point they spot a bus that represents their ticket to freedom. They run up alongside the bus, smacking it and yelling for the driver to stop, but she, I guess, sees how fucked up they look and decides to just take off.
I don't think so.
In a moment of rage, Mike shoots at the bus as it's speeding away.
Come back! You're gonna give us a ride!
I get it, he's frustrated from being kicked while he's down time and time again that night, but my god, man. When you're on the run from a psycho in a leather trench coat, you don't give away your position by doing your best imitation of Frank Reynolds.
I started blasting. Bang! Bang!
But Judgment Night is one of those films with such solid antagonists that you can kind of forgive the movie for throwing so many stupid choices into the mix. For the role of Fallon, Stephen Hopkins really wanted Kevin Spacey for this part, as he recalls meeting him after a Broadway performance of Lost in Yonkers, where he came across as both creepy and wonderful. Emphasis on creepy. Ironically enough, Samuel L. Jackson, John Travolta's other half in Pulp Fiction, also tried out for this role, but lost it to Denis Leary. The mopey kid's stepdad in Sandlot? The dude tickling the ivory in Loaded Weapon 1? That Denis Leary?
You really got me.
I'll admit, the first time I saw this movie, I laid eyes on him and kind of chuckled to myself because, as much as I appreciate the dude's work, at first glance, he doesn't really seem all that intimidating. The way they have him dressed in the leather coat with the flippy blonde hair, he doesn't look like the guy who would sing the song Asshole, but rather Iris by the fucking Goo Goo Dolls. That being said, once the movie got rolling, I forgot about all of that because he 1000% owned this role.
Yap, 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 all night long, fucking yap, yap, yap.
There's a moment in the film where Frank and the guys hide out in an apartment complex, and just outside stands a gang of young kids who confront Fallon and his men. He offers the leader of the gang a bit of money to let them pass through, and the kid says, "If I want your money, I'll take it." To which Fallon replies,
"You can't take my money, but you can take my money."
This line wasn't in the original script, so either it was written on the day or Denis Leary improvised it, but the way he delivers it is just so damn good. Like, the cadence in his voice almost reminded me of Jesse's introduction for Saul Goodman in Breaking Bad.
You don't want a criminal lawyer. You want a criminal lawyer.
Something I really appreciate about this movie is the fact that the city itself and the darkness of the night looming over it were almost treated as additional antagonists. The way that Stephen Hopkins and his go-to cinematographer Peter Levy captured the scenery, only adding light when absolutely necessary, just looked incredible. Stephen and Peter have done a ton of projects together, but I'm pretty sure Judgment Night was used as a bit of a demo reel for their eventual involvement in the first few episodes of the series 24, which had a similar look during a lot of its nighttime scenes. When they sent some of their footage or dailies to Universal Pictures to look over, they legitimately didn't think that some of the city footage was real. They thought a lot of these surroundings were achieved through the use of matte paintings. Pretty much everything was shot on location with exception to the sewer, which was built out as one big interconnected set piece within multiple sound stages at Culver City Studio. Judgment Night also uses a lot of these split diopter shots, which might appear a bit dated to some, but I think look pretty damn cool. My favorite being the one where they zoom in on Denis Leary's toothy-ass grin.
Bitch, you got too many teeth in your mouth.
But Fallon is accompanied by 3 henchmen, known simply as Sykes, Rhodes, and Travis. An actor named Michael Wiseman played the latter character. He's one of those guys who has appeared in literally every crime drama under the sun, including, hilariously enough, the one episode of CSI Miami that I've discussed on this channel. The funny thing about this character is comedian Adam Carolla actually worked as a stand-in for this actor, despite the fact that he looked nothing like the guy.
I was a stand-in on Judgment Night.
Were you standing in for Everlast, or were you standing in for Denis Leary?
He had long hair and was 3 inches shorter than me.
Michael Wiseman?
Adam was a stand-in for the LA shoot, which was done towards the tail end of production. He recalls that tensions were a bit high on the set because it turns out that all of the good guys and all of the bad guys went a little bit too method with their performances.
The bad guys didn't want to talk to the good guys, right. And then the bad stand-ins didn't want to talk to the good stand-ins. It was crazy, right?
That's right. No, they set a tone that we were going to be opposition and foes throughout the entire production.
So much so that Peter Green was allegedly fired from the movie during the tail end of production.
They had fired Peter Green. They decided to use his stand-in for the rest of the movie.
He's one of these guys who plays like an out-of-control badass in the movies.
And?
Out-of-control badass, apparently off-screen as well.
You know, holding the concierge at gunpoint, demanding you get into, well, that's a whole nother situation.
So he was...
As for the character of Rhodes... Listen, I'm going to tread lightly here because I know he likes to write diss tracks about people who don't recognize him, but without his signature sunglasses, I was completely unaware that this character was played by Everlast.
Lucy, I'm home. Got some explaining to do.
Apparently, Everlast wasn't exactly adored by the director because he would constantly criticize the movie during filming by saying things like, yeah, 4 guys are walking around Cabrini Green in Chicago acting like they run shit. This is realistic.
The director hated me, by the way. So I was in that movie so much more than I'm in it. Like, there's so much of me on the cutting room floor somewhere.
And he wasn't exactly wrong because Stephen Hopkins later admitted that he and his crew were often humbled by just how real things got during some of those nighttime shoots in Chicago. He later recalled that while filming the infamous rooftop scene, just north of Cabrini Green actually, a loud gunshot rang out from one of the floors below. Some of the crew members raced downstairs to see what happened, only to discover that a 16-year-old shot another kid as a gang initiation. The next day, the army came in and shut the entire building down. But Everlast's involvement in the film acts as a perfect segue to the thing that most people remember Judgment Night for. The original soundtrack jam-packed with collaborations between rock bands and hip-hop artists. And I don't use the term jam-packed lightly, because this thing was so stacked that the front of the album cover didn't have enough room to fit Therapy, shout out to the Road Rash soundtrack, who collaborated with Fatal, Dinosaur Jr. and Del the Funky Homo Sapien, and motherfucking Pearl Jam and Cypress Hill. The way in which this whole thing came together is truly like some mythical shit. Immortal Records co-founder Happy Walters, who by the way is good friends with Adam Sandler and inspiration for the name Happy Gilmore, was the manager for Cypress Hill and House of Pain. He met Pearl Jam about 1 year after the album 10 exploded onto the scene, at which point the band admitted that their favorite group was Cypress Hill. Through that interaction, Cypress was invited to appear with Pearl Jam at a free show in Seattle called Drop in the Park. Anyone familiar with Pearl Jam lore knows that this is the show where Eddie Vedder climbed up onto the scaffolding to retrieve a mic he threw and rappelled back down onto the stage using just the microphone's cable. Happy Walters was in attendance at that show, and when he witnessed that moment, he thought to himself, hey man, I've got to get these kind of groups to start working together. So he started calling around to different contacts throughout the music industry, pitching a rap rock compilation album that would act as sort of a tribute to Aerosmith's collaboration with Run DMC. At some point, the album's focus was reshifted and it became the soundtrack for Judgment Night. Everlast has since stated that he should have pursued an executive producer position on the album, because a conversation he had with Happy and DJ Muggs sort of planted the seeds that kicked the whole thing off.
Without any bitterness, that I should have been the executive producer and all that of that soundtrack, but the guy who wound up with it was my manager.
However, a lot of the bands and artists that were approached for this project weren't 100% on board. For example, Notorious B.I.G. turned it down, Jane's Addiction's Perry Farrell turned it down, and Ice Cube was originally supposed to appear on the album alongside Dinosaur Jr., but he bowed out and his cousin Del took his place instead. A similar situation occurred with the group PM Dawn. About a week after Teenage Fanclub was told they'd be collaborating with them, the band got a call saying PM Dawn had stepped away from the project. However, on the same call, they were asked if they'd be at all interested in working with De La Soul instead. Former Teenage Fanclub bass player Gerard Love later stated, "I'm not going to say it was like being asked if we would like to work with the Beatles, but De La Soul were such a special group and had made such an impact right across the spectrum that the offer was almost like a dream come true." The result of that collaboration was the film's opening track, Fallon. Both artists worked the entire thing out completely in studio with nothing prepared beforehand. And it came together so nicely that Tom Petty didn't hesitate one bit when he was asked if Free Fallin' could be sampled for the song's chorus. And it turns out that Ice-T and Slayer had a similar positive reaction when they found out that they'd be working together on a track. One that acted as the ultimate tribute to Run DMC and Aerosmith because it was also produced by Rick Rubin.
A speed metal duet.
Hatred can bring you down!
Conducted by producer Rick Rubin, brought Ice-T together with one of his favorite bands, Slayer.
There's also a collaboration between Tool and Rage Against the Machine that is still floating around on the internet, which was supposedly going to be included on the soundtrack. Happy Walters confirmed that Rage was fully on board, but Tool and their record label didn't turn in their side of the collaboration in time, so they just decided to move forward without it. I want to ask though, what are some collaborations you would have liked to see on this album between bands and hip-hop artists of the early 90s? Knowing that Lane Staley was a fan of NWA, I think a collaboration between MC Ren and Alice in Chains would have been insane. In the months leading up to the release of the movie, MTV promoted the soundtrack on Headbangers Ball and MTV News, which definitely helped boost its sales. The record was certified gold about 2 months after it hit store shelves. Unfortunately, having a best-selling soundtrack didn't necessarily mean that Judgment Night would receive the same amount of fanfare. Having released 1 week after Demolition Man, a sci-fi action film that had the power of Stallone and Taco Bell on its side, not to mention a supporting role from Denis Leary,
I'm the enemy, because I like to think.
Judgment Night was just completely overshadowed by that film. The film's reputation was also damaged by a violent event that unfolded at a theater in Brooklyn, New York. At the Fulton Mall's Metropolitan Theater during the last screening on the film's opening night, a man sitting in the front row got into a fistfight with another person, eventually escalating into a gunfight that claimed the life of one individual and left 3 others injured. Stephen Hopkins later claimed that the blame for this incident was pinned on the violent subject matter of Judgment Night, saying, "The film was pulled from cinemas and it disappeared very quickly." But this incident also led to the closure of the Metropolitan Theater just a few years later. A pharmacy and church now sit in its place. What are the fucking chances? After wrapping up the movie, director Stephen Hopkins jumped right into 1994's Blown Away, starring Jeff Bridges and Tommy Lee Jones, which I will absolutely be covering in this series one day. As for Judgment Night, it's currently free to watch on YouTube, and although some of the protagonist's choices throughout the film might leave you scratching your head, it's a solid action thriller that is absolutely worthy of your time. But that'll do it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. This new Films from a Lost Era series won't be replacing my usual uploads, although I did have a great time talking about something other than comedy for once. But don't worry, because the next episode will be a return to form. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Anyone familiar with Pearl Jam lore knows that this is the show where Eddie fucking Vader, dude.